Hello everyone, it's Jazz here. I'm here to talk about language maintenance. So when you get to a point where you feel like you've gotten at least a good handle on a language and you're trying to move forward a little bit, so we're going to talk about language maintenance. So I have learned about 10 languages in my lifetime. I can speak in the first 5 without minimal help. Mostly I'm receptive in the last 5, or just basically the further down I go. And it's the last one I believe is Arabic, and that one I'm not the greatest at. All I know is how to sound out words, and there's a few words I know, and I can pick out a few things. So I will just say with language maintenance, it is a way of life. Each language has its own purpose, and I made a video of what I use each of those for and why I originally learned them in the first place. And then the other thing is some are more necessary than others. So for example, with French, I teach French, Spanish, and German. I teach those, all 3 of those. I primarily work with beginners, so most of the time I'm dealing with beginner language. So it's kind of like I have to on my own make sure that I am progressing as they're progressing. And then I've also taught intro classes and created curriculum around the German language specifically. I studied in Paris in 2018, and I basically was trying to focus on doing everything in French. I was like, I'm going to speak French. There is no English. We're going to continue to keep using this. I did not use this. I did not make my way all the way up to AP French in high school just to lose it all. When I lived in Germany in 2021, this was around the time of the pandemic. Basically, that was mainly me focusing on German. The whole reason was for me to focus on improving my German. And I made sure that when I arrived that I was at least at an A2 level. The visa requirement was A1, but I wanted to be at least ahead of the curve, so that way I wasn't behind. Then I traveled to Mexico in 2019, so actually a little bit before that. And I was all about Spanish, and my friend told me that it was really important for me to ensure that I was speaking primarily in Spanish first, because there was not a guarantee that people are going to be fully equipped to speak English. And I was fine with that. And ever since I got a smartphone, I have never had my phone in English. Like when I use my video editing software, I have pretty much always used it in French. I know what it is. It just feels like a default for me. So being able to see things in English and being able to completely understand it right away is just really odd to me. I changed my Google accounts, everything. So I'm surrounded by this language no matter what. I've talked about how VPN is a very valuable language learning tool. That actually helped me find some valuable native speaker content, especially it really helped me with my Google searches if I was looking for native speaker content or content created specifically by native speakers, just in general. So the thing was, is I wanted to normalize for myself not understanding everything. So a lot of times I had to refer to everything by context. So there might be some words, I might be reading something like Google sent me an email about an update. Usually I'll skim through it, but usually if there's words I don't understand, I usually will just kind of skim through it, and the context will tell me what I need to know. I do have translation tools that are downloaded on my phone as well as my computer, so that way I always, if there's something that I don't know, especially if I'm working with a student and I happen to come across something that I don't even know, I still have to make sure I'm checking and verifying. And then also, teaching has really helped solidify my understanding. When you teach a language, that is like the ultimate form of mastery. If you can take concepts that you learned and be able to explain it to someone who is a beginner, from like all these complex things into something that is very simple for them to understand, that is a skill. And so at the same time, that also prompts me to learn a little bit more, especially about geography, culture, and, all kinds of aspects, even international news, politics, all those kinds of things really helps me to be able to better teach my students in a more well-rounded way. Like conversation groups have really been very helpful, because that way you can constantly be using it and you never know who shows up. I mean, I was in a conversation group for French, and then a Swiss person showed up, and I said, I have so many questions for you because I'm not familiar with Swiss culture. And it's not like, do they have a military in Switzerland? I'm like, no, like specific questions about their way of life, their politics, or things that I've heard on the news, and all these different things. So it's just this aspect of you never know who's going to show up and who's going to be able to help educate you in certain ways. Like in Switzerland, how do you typically talk about this? Or I know that how do you deal with being in a country that has 4 languages officially? Those kinds of things. So you can ask some really good questions. The other thing is the journals. I actually have a series of journals that I write in just French. I've been doing that for years. It's really helpful for me to learn how to express myself and use vocabulary that I have in written form. So it kind of trains me to start thinking in that language. So when I write, I'm not thinking in English to French. I'm just thinking like directly in French when it comes to my own thoughts. And that's like a really great place to be, where you don't have to think about it. You're not hesitating. My focus is always shifted on what's relevant to me. So for me, like I'm trying to get my French and my Dutch up to a point because I have an exciting thing that's coming up. I need to get those to a really high proficiency level. French, I have no problem with. It's Dutch. Dutch is the other thing. So it's just looking at what's relevant for me to talk about, whether it be my research, whether it be talking about my job, whether it talk about, my teaching, whether it talks about like books that I've read. Being able to express yourself and learning how to do that is really important. Like when I look at content that is on YouTube, I watch so many vloggers. I love vlogs. They're great for background noise. So I always have that in the background or somewhere. I might find a German vlogger and I just will put her on the screen. And that helps me because in the background, I'm still training myself to hear it. This is a component that goes back to when you originally learned this language. So every language that I have has had a purpose. I've learned languages just because I wanted to be a better friend to someone that I knew who was an international student. I've had an experience being an immigrant, so I'm like, well, it's just nice to know that one person in this country speaks my language. Arabic, I originally learned that. I plan to eventually get more consistent with Arabic, but I originally learned it because I wanted to be able to read the Quran because I have friends who are Muslim. I am a Christian by a long shot, but I still think that because the Muslim faith is part of those 3 Abrahamic faiths, I'm very curious as to what their religious text is, because with Judaism, Christianity derives from that. So like from Hebrew and going into Arabic, I feel like they're both very similar languages because I do see some similarities, but it's just a matter of being able to understand and be more empathetic towards other people who are different from me so that I can ask more intelligent questions when I'm around them versus like, oh, Ramadan, like, so you don't eat anything? I'm like, yeah. Sometimes I want to know what some of these random holidays are. And so it's just me doing my own research so I can have a better conversation with other people. And that is pretty much the point of learning any language, is not just to say you know the language. It is for the purpose of you using it. So I hope that this kind of helps you in terms of how I maintain my languages. And I think it's just mostly just passive, and there's also active ways. Like I said, conversation groups really help. And then also at the same time, like I said, content that I normally would watch. I watch all of my yoga or Pilates videos. I watch them in the target language. And I'm just used to it. Like, it's like chien tête en bas. Oh, downward facing dog. I've heard that a million times. You learn body parts. You know how to, like, movements, like direction words, like to the left, to the right, all these different things. So that way you're equipping yourself to be able to effectively do those things. If I wanted to go to France or Belgium or Switzerland and do a yoga class, I would know what they're talking about because that's something I'm interested in. And so I think that it's really about what's in it for you as well in terms of making the language fun for you to learn. But then at the same time, it's also a matter of what do you want to do with this language? Who do you want to communicate with? So that's what I have for you today. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.